Welcome to Purpose After Sports, where we interview athletes to share their post-sport journeys and explore how they are reinventing what it means to compete. Today, I am lucky enough to be joined with Erica Curry. She is a licensed therapist and a former Division I athlete. She now specializes in helping current and former athletes and high-achieving professionals navigate the mental side of sport and life. Erica, thank you so much for taking time to come on today.
Thank you so much for having me. I've been following along for a little bit now and very happy to be sitting with you.
Well, I'm happy you agreed because we just were chatting a little bit before the podcast of just the mental side of sport before, your transition and then also during. And it's becoming a little more and more talked about, but it's a topic I'm passionate about and I know that you are. So I'm ready to get into the nitty-gritty today,
Let's
and
do
also share
it.
your story. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's start. I like to go back with my athletes. You swam at the Division I level. Talk to me about what drew you to your sport as a swimmer, and then what you loved most about being part of a college team.
Okay. So that is a great question because it was an interesting journey to how I ended up in my sport. So I actually started out as a gymnast and I was like 5 years old probably when I took my first gymnastics class. I really
Yeah.
loved it. It was like, I'm going to do this my whole life. And then fast forward to when I was like 12, I sustained a career-ending injury to my elbow.
Oh wow.
I broke the tip of my humerus, which is like your elbow bone, and that broke into a lot of different pieces. Those pieces of bone would float into my joint, and I wasn't able to move my arm. And then, like, I went to the doctor, they found out what was going on, and they were like, "Wow, this has been broken for a long time. So, how have
Wow.
you been functioning?" And so they're like, "You you need to have surgery. We can't just have these pieces of bone, like, floating into your joint like this." Especially since I was a kid, so my arm
Yeah.
was, like, trying to grow and stuff. So, they told me I could try to go back to gymnastics, but it would likely be really hard. So I tried. It was extremely painful, and, I had a family member who was a diver, and she was like, "A lot of the skills transfer from gymnastics to diving, and it's lower impact, so, like, you might wanna give it a try." So
Yeah.
that's how I wound up giving diving a shot, and it is true, so many of the skills transfer, you just have to get used to, like, landing on your head, which you don't do a lot of in gymnastics, but,
Yeah.
that was kind of a saving grace for me of, like, being able to still do what I love just in a way where my body wasn't going to be so impacted.
I guess I haven't really taken time to see the correlation, but that does make a lot of sense of
Mhm.
how it could transfer. Now, was there a because you in gymnastics kind of have to be fearless. I know there can be mental blocks and things like that, but was there a fear of how high you're getting in diving
Ugh.
and going off the diving board?
So, I was never afraid of heights, I found it really fun, but what was scary is, like, once you know diving, you also know how many ways it can go wrong, so it becomes less about how high up in the air you are and more
Yeah.
about how close to the board are you? How off from being straight up and down are you? Like, there's bigger things to be worried about, and I would say
Yeah.
that was a lot more challenging for me, and that's where being on a team was important for me because that's what helped me, like, we really helped each other face our fears in that sense because none of us were really afraid of how high up in the air we were because we just got desensitized to that. It was an everyday thing. It was more
Yeah.
about the oh my gosh, am I gonna hit the board? Am I gonna smack? Is this just gonna be a total belly flop or a back flop? Which landing flat on your back can hurt so much more. Like, it's just there's so many ways you can land that it
Oh,
ends up so painful. So being on a team was very helpful. We all really helped each other through. And when I went to college, when I went to Wagner College, so it's a tiny private school on Staten Island in New York. And when I went on my official visit, all my visits as a senior, I really just wanted to pay attention to how close all of the teams were because I knew I
mm,
wasn't gonna survive or be able to improve if I didn't have supportive teammates who helped each other in that way of being like, "You know what? You got this," and then being able to, like,
yeah.
validate and cheer each other on, so because a lot of people would be like, "Wow, Wagner's, like, such a random tiny school, like, how did you end up there? And I was like, well, first of all, the coach found me, like, I had no idea this school existed,
Yeah.
but then what got me to stay was, like, the team was just very close-knit, and they were really supportive of each other, so, yeah, that's, like, that piece of team definitely very important to me and was something I really looked out for even at the ripe age of 18.
Yeah, that's so important though, because it can if you don't know much about the sport, it can kinda look more as individual even though you were on a team. So that's such an interesting perspective of, like, still looking for that team environment as you come together and, whether you're facing fears or just need that extra support. I really like that look on that. So, talk to me about you're in both sports. Those are very time invested. I mean, in gymnastics, you're hours and hours and hours, and I know swim and dive can be the same thing. Did you notice how invested you were starting to get more and more into sport? Were you able to find a balance at a young age?
I did so I was just in I just switched from gymnastics to diving and like
Yeah,
that's all that it was. Like it
yeah,
was just and I mean the balance I kind of have the opposite problem and I think a lot of like former athletes have this is like you get so used to being really busy that like you don't know how to not be busy.
yep,
So
yeah,
it's
yep,
more like I don't and I kinda see because in my work as a therapist, I work with dialectics, so it's the whole 2 things can be true at the same time, and
yeah,
so and then it's almost like for elite high performance people, whether it's athletics or otherwise, it's like on one side of the dialectic, we have, like, complete and total rest, you're doing nothing, maybe a little bit of couch potato type of situation. On the other end, it's just, like, hyper focused, you feel like you're not doing enough if you take a second to sit on the couch,
yeah,
and it's almost like when you're high performance, that dialectic, like, you don't get the far end of like, "Oh, I'm a couch potato and I feel good about it and it's okay." It's like you're only in the hyper focus, we're doing a lot, and then it's burnout on the other end because the engaging and enjoying couch potato doesn't like, we
yeah,
don't give that to ourselves. And that's definitely something because I mean, I'm 10 years out of it now, so
yeah.
I know, of course, I'm always improving and bettering myself, but I know it's, like, world of difference than 5 years ago, 6, 7 years ago. So, yeah, I would say it's kinda like I knew how to handle a lot of stuff, and now it's about, "Okay, how do I handle what feels good to me so that my quality of work is as high as it possibly can be and leaves me space to grow?" So,
I know we were talking about some of these years, but I'm smiling the whole time because you're speaking about me. Yeah, the non couch potato. That's me. I'm in the hyper. Like even if I'm sitting down, it's like I have to be doing six things at once because oh, I'm sitting down. Well, then I can get this done. And then like you said, figuring out burnout was not until after college what that was. Like, I was experiencing it definitely as an athlete, but it was so natural and so used to being so busy that it was like, this was normal, and then you realize in everyday life, "Oh, it's not."
no, it's not sustainable. Do you remember
Yeah.
what, like, burnout symptoms were, like, super heavy for you?
Um, Definitely fatigue,
Mhm.
tired a lot, a lack of energy in things that I love, um I think that was a big one too of like, I know that I really enjoy doing this thing, but why am I dragging, hating it so much to do this? Or like just mundane tasks and stuff
Mhm.
like that. And I was like, okay. And then I emotionally would just, it would bottle up and then they would let go at random moments. And I was like, oh, I'm not processing. I haven't been processing what has
Yeah.
been. So yeah, I think those would probably be the biggest ones where I was like, hmm.
Well, and
Maybe we
it's
have put too much.
interesting because it's like how much and this is where, like, pathology can really get in the way because it's like so much of what you just said could technically be depressive symptoms, and it's like, okay, we have to it's so important to look at context of, like,
Yes.
could it be depression? we would need to okay, I guess technically those are symptoms, but then it's like we have to look different at how much of this is us responding to our environment and that being we have so much on our plate that we're
Yes.
just tired. We don't gotta
Yes.
make this a whole ordeal of like, now do we need to look at medication for depression? First, let's
Yeah.
start with, am I just burnt out as hell and need to learn how to rest and give myself permission to take a break? Now, I am as like DBT is very like we're supportive of medication, and at the same time it's that we a big like quote from it from the creator Marshall Linehan is skills before pills, but we're also very like, I'm not knocking medication. Anyone who's on medication, power to you. So glad if it helps you. I just also think it's so important to be mindful that we don't over pathologize people and like that, and
Yeah.
burnout has so many depressive symptoms in it that it can be so
Yeah.
hard to like parse it out.
No, I appreciate you saying that because it was so scary to talk about at first because that like if you go on the internet or you like say those things out loud and someone doesn't know your background or how much you're doing or what your how your brain is wired, that's what it can feel like. And you not that that is wrong at all.
Mhm,
And getting help in those in either aspect is super important. But then you're like, again, dissecting and realizing, wait, that's because I've taken on 6 projects and just agreed to 7 more, and now I can't
mhm.
fathom, like, what the next task is, you know? So I definitely think it's important to know the context of it and kind of, breaking it down with professional help or maybe yourself just kind of, seeing what's going on there, so we're getting deep already, I love this. Oh, man. Before I get too far into what you do,
Uh-huh.
with your college career, when or was there a point where you started to think there is more than just being an athlete? Because I know you're super passionate about the life after sport topic. When did you start noticing, hey, this is gonna become a thing?
I wish I would have noticed it sooner.
Yeah,
Of course, like logically, I understood. It's not like there's a million options for divers after
yeah,
college. Like it's kind of like if you're not going to the Olympics, your career's over. There's not much we're doing. I guess there's cliff diving, which is really cool, but that also is almost a whole different sport of its own because it's so much taller and stuff.
yeah,
So, regardless, I didn't really think about it until my senior year of college. So if anyone's listening to this and you're like, "Oh my gosh, like I'm about to go into spring semester senior year and I still don't have it figured out." Neither did I. I
yeah.
I panicked hard. Luckily, I had a really supportive athletic director. She was actually on the swim team when I was a freshman and she was a senior. And
Oh,
I
wow.
just, like, tapped into the resources of the athletic department, and, like,
Yeah.
by that, I mean, I went to her office once a week, like, freaking out of, like, "I don't know what I'm gonna do. I need
Yeah,
help. Can you help me?" And she was just looking at like, she was like, "Okay, like, you're a psychology major, you minored in Spanish, like, you took some courses on, like, being a therapist, like, you live in Southern California, like, what if you were a therapist and you even got to keep, like, using Spanish? Like, it works out for where you live." And I was like,
yeah,
"Okay, like, that's a cool idea." And she told me to, like, start looking at schools, and I found a program because my dream school was Cal State Long Beach, because I just grew up driving past that school in order for me to get to practice.
yeah,
And they don't have a diving team, so it wasn't, like, an option for undergrad, and I really like, that was more important to me to, like, be an athlete in college than to go to Cal State Long Beach, and they have a really amazing therapy program, and I was like, "Hmm, maybe I could go to my dream school." So I really tapped into the resources. I really freaked out because I would say I'm an anxious individual. Like, I get very nervous and worried, and I want things to be well organized and figured out. I like knowing what's coming up next in my life, and now I do enjoy more spontaneity, but, like, that semester of school, oh, no, I was
yeah,
really not having a good time and just really making sure that I asked for help, and asking for help made all the difference because I got the help. I applied to a few schools and I ended up getting into Cal State Long Beach and was like, "All right, looks like I'm gonna go back home because it was either that or I applied to a communications program at Bryant University because they needed a diving coach. So I was gonna be like a graduate assistant at that school
Yeah.
or go back home if I got into Cal State Long Beach, and I got into Cal State Long Beach. So I always wonder, like, what would life be like if I went the other route? Who knows? Because that school's like on the other
Who
side of the
knows?
country. So
Yeah. What a decision to make. So, did you, with asking for help and kind of having that assistance of, hey, these are things you might be interested in, was the diving deeper into psychology route something you knew during college? Um, did you know that where you ultimately wanted to end up in the professional world?
yeah, I definitely so I was told actually in high school, I took a psychology class my senior year, and my high school teacher told me, like, "You have a knack for this. Like, you're very naturally curious about this. Like,
Yeah.
if you don't know what you're majoring in college, like, he like joked with me and he was like, I know a lot of people like choose psychology because they want an easy major, especially if they're playing a sport. But like, he was like, I think you'd actually like it and you could do something with it. And it was nice. He did tell me, he was like, be aware, like you're likely gonna have to continue your education because it's tough to get a job with a bachelor's in psychology. But he was like, if you like school, which I do, he was
Yeah.
like, you should really consider it. And so it was nice. I just took him at his word and was like, hey, if he notices that in me, I'll go for it. And I did. I took some really awesome classes that I was like, oh, I really like this. And things have changed so much. And this is where I'm like, I'm so much more go with the flow than I ever was 5, 10 years ago. Because
Yeah.
when I first graduated college, there was one class that really stood out to me, and it was death and dying. And so it's like counseling for grief, like just grief work. And I was like, I loved
Wow.
that class. And I was like, that's all I want to do is grief work. Like, this is amazing. Um,
Wow.
Turns out grief, yeah, like naturally your response is like, oh, that's really heavy. Yeah. Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Turns out I
Wow.
cannot only do grief work because it is in fact so heavy. It is
Yes.
something I love and I am passionate about, but I cannot have an entire caseload of just like significant loss. And like, yeah, there's everyone has like some sense of loss, but like I'm talking like that it's just very heavy for that to be the only focus. So
Yeah.
there's no one place when I finished college that I was like, oh, this is where I'm gonna end up because it's kind of just transformed over time because I was like, how do I because back 10 years ago, athlete mental health wasn't what it is today. It
Yep.
wasn't so focused on, and I was like, I'd like to help create a space for that, but I don't know how to do that. And so I was like, you
Mhm.
know what? I'll go to school, keep my eyes and ears open throughout the process, and like, we'll see what happens. So along the way, I did a lot of stuff because also as a new therapist, like, you don't really get to pick what you do because you have to go to, like, your placements for practicum and your internships and all of that. So I
Yeah.
ended up doing a lot of different things along the way before I got into private practice, which ended up working out for me just because there's so much information and knowledge that I never would have had if I didn't
Mm.
go through all the different routes that I did to get here.
Now, when you were on this journey, were you avoiding your sport or were you still carrying bits and pieces of your athlete identity with you?
I think this is a question best answered through story. So, like, the answer is I was in complete denial. I pretended like diving didn't exist. I went through the stages of grief, like
Yeah.
denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. Like, oh, and acceptance, it comes and goes, and that's okay. But, the story that I have to describe this is we had in grad school, there was, like, a day that one of our professors was like, "Okay, I want you guys coming dressed however you would dress to, like, your therapy job." Like, she just wanted to check out that we weren't gonna, like, be sitting in a therapy room looking crazy. So it's just
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
"Just come dressed how you're gonna dress in the therapy room." And I remember, like, I don't know what to wear outside of, like, leggings and, like, an athletic t-shirt, like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
There is nothing else. Like, what do you mean? So I'm like going to the store, just looking through the lens of like, what does a therapist wear? Not what would I wear? Because me, I'm still an athlete in my head. So like,
Yeah.
I don't know. And that was something that like really forced me to be like, I don't think that there's been any identity work outside like since college because I literally was like, I don't know what a therapist wears, but, like, it is she and the whole class was about, like, how to integrate yourself into the but I was thinking about how do I integrate an athlete with a therapist, not me as a human. So, yeah,
Yes.
big denial.
I love that story, and I wanna go back to when you sprinkled on the idea of the acceptance comes and goes,
Mhm.
because I've been out several years and, what was it, 2 years ago now? We did, an activity with our master's group, and one of them was to write down a list of characteristics and most everyone in the class, or if you were an athlete, wrote down athlete at one point. And fast forward, he asked you to rip up that card. The professor asked you to rip up that athlete card. And when I tell you every bone in my body, it's an index card. And I was like, it can't rip. Like,
Uh-huh.
I can't rip it. Like, there's no way. And it was like, Nick, you're still like, there are still moments where you're like, you still carry this very strongly. And
Mhm.
so I like that it's not well as we talk about it and as we find our identity and stuff like that, it can be a spectrum and it can shift. That was such a huge part of your life. And it's okay sometimes that you're like, hold on, I'm still that athlete.
So true, and that's where I think, because you know how we hear the phrase, like, "Healing isn't linear," and it's like,
Yes.
okay, what does that mean, though? Like, can someone tell me what that means? And it's like, it really is, it's re to me, it speaks to acceptance that some days we're in acceptance, and it's like, "Okay, yeah, that isn't a part of my life anymore, and that's okay."
Yeah.
And some days, like, I remember what was it? Was it 2 it was last year, we had, like, our 10-year anniversary of winning championships, so they, like, invited our team back to, like, induct us into the Hall of Fame because we were the first swimming and diving, like, class to win championships, so
Oh, wow.
they held, like, this event for us, which was so cool, but, like, it definitely threw me and it threw me into, like, non-acceptance of just, like, "Oh, man, like, this is over, this is crazy," and, like, I shed a tear, and it's also at the same time non-judgmentally being out of acceptance is okay. Like, it doesn't
Yeah.
mean that you took 1 step forward to take 2 steps back. That's not what that means. It just means that, like, you're going through some of the past chapters, and that can be very healing too. What gets in our way is when we beat ourselves up for looking at those past chapters. Like, it's
Yeah.
okay. It's okay to be in a space of non-acceptance. It will come again. You can turn your mind back towards acceptance. And if you don't know how to do that, that's where something like therapy is very helpful.
That's a really, really positive way to look at it because it's so true. Everything is come and go, and you can't in any part of the identity shift or becoming a former athlete. Um, it's gonna be days, it's gonna be weeks, it's gonna be months. It'll be sometimes where you're just like, "Eh, I kinda miss it," but it's like you said, coming back to that core thing of how much progress you made, and that doesn't negate all the progress that you've made. Hmm,
Exactly.
love it. Okay, well, I want to dive into more of, um the work that you're doing now. Can we talk about how you got in the transition? I know you help others outside of athletics, but can we talk about the work that you do with former and current athletes? What does that look like, and how did you say, "Hey, I want to get more into that group"?
Yeah, absolutely. I will say because I've been a therapist for like 8, 9 years now, so it was there's so many things before it. So I'll do like quick version of what led up to it and then like how I
Mhm.
segued into where it's at today. Because I started out in community mental health. I worked within child abuse and neglect and domestic violence for a few
Wow.
years. And that was I worked in English, Spanish, I taught parenting classes, I did a grief group, I ran domestic violence classes, I saw individuals, couples, families, like pretty much did everything and got
Yeah.
to create a parenting curriculum along the way, which was really cool. And so after that, I went into substance abuse treatment and I was at all levels of care. So everything from residential to outpatient. And I went into substance abuse because typically after working in community mental health, which was like my internship in school, and then they had hired me and I stayed a little bit longer. Typically after that, like, a lot of therapists go one of 2 ways. It's either into, like, eating disorders or substance abuse treatment, or at least where I'm
Mm,
at, for some reason, that's, like, the usual route, and I was thinking,
yeah,
"Okay, like, what will help serve athletes?" Because I know I'm gonna wanna work with, like, athletes and former athletes, and there are a lot of former athletes or, like, athletes that get injured, and it is a career-ending injury, and they end up, like, being prescribed a medication, like a pain medication to help along with that injury, and then they realize it does more than just help the physical pain, it helps the mental and emotional pain of it all too, and it leads to a
yeah,
tough downward spiral that's really tough to get out of. So I was like, "You know what? Like, I think I wanna go that route, just because I think it will be most helpful to what I wanna do ultimately."
yeah,
And that I learned a lot working at this treatment center, and then, from there, while I was working in treatment, I found dialectical behavioral therapy, which is DBT for short, which basically is a set of skills, just how athletes train skills for their sport, you can train skills for your mind, and that's what DBT is. There is a range of 4 different skill sets, and then based on how intensely you're feeling on a 0 to 10 scale, there's a specific grouping of skills that go with that level of intensity. So, like, the groupings of skills are mindfulness, distress tolerance, which is how to get through a difficult situation without making it worse, emotion regulation, and communication skills. And then the emotional intensity scale is just a 0 to 10 scale called the subjective units of distress scale, and it talks about how, like, when you're at a 7, you, like, can't expect yourself to be your best communicating self. Like, if you're at a 7, 8, 9, 10, like, it's time to hit
yeah,
pause before you keep having a really important conversation, for example. So that package of skills just made so much sense to me as a former athlete that I was like, "Why
yeah,
aren't we, like, using this with everyone?" Or, like, "Why aren't we learning these at a younger age?" Because it just makes sense.
yeah,
So, I found DBT while I was working in that treatment center, and then I sought a job that was only focused on DBT, and I was a standard DBT therapist at a DBT agency for a few years, which
very
was
cool.
an absolutely amazing experience, and then burnout bit me in the butt, and I was like, "I have to rearrange some things and make my life work for me rather than feeling like I'm just, like, running myself into the ground." So that's when I went into private practice so that I could just have a little bit more control over how many people I'm seeing and what type of work I'm doing and making sure that I could work with athletes 'cause there there did come a moment when I was, like, 7 years in, and I looked back and was like, "Okay, so at what point am I gonna be allowed to work with athletes?" And I realized I had to give myself permission to work with
Yeah.
athletes and just make it happen myself. So, yeah, that's the long answer.
I love the long answer though, because it shows our earlier transitioning athletes that there's not one path. I mean, there's such a journey to where you get to.
Mhm.
Even if you come with an idea, you had an idea of where you wanted to go, but it takes certain different experiences to get where you end up, and that's amazing. And with you working with athletes now, even at the beginning, was, it difficult to kinda separate yourself, um, with them sharing stories? I know, there's certain things I'm sure you can't talk about, but what was that like starting to let more and more athlete back into your life in that way?
Oh, that's a really good question. I would say it definitely, like, has brought up memories that I'm like, "Oh, dang, I
Mhm.
totally forgot about that." And it is I will say something I'm grateful for is, like, since I've been a therapist so long, like, I can be like, "Okay, like, I could put a tack in that," and, like, I'm a therapist who fully believes in, like, therapists going to therapy, so, like,
Yeah.
I have my own therapist. Natasha is wonderful, and I get to talk to her about so many things. So I would say, yeah, things definitely come up. I would say it's hard to separate it, like, at a point, it can't be separated just because like, I can't control what memories get brought up in my brain, but, like, I
Yeah.
wouldn't say it doesn't get to a point where like, I'm talking about something in a session, it's more of just like a I note it and then I bring it to my therapist, and sometimes
Yeah.
it's nothing, like, it's just like a happy memory, and I'm like, "Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Alright, we'll keep it moving," but, yeah, it's definitely it can be hard or, like, if someone's injured, because I mean, as an athlete, like, there's none of us really get out of it without being injured in some way. That
Right.
can be hard because it can bring you back to, like, that feeling of just, like, being trapped, of, like, watching your team do things that, like, you so want to and the pull to get back in it before you're fully healed, like, I'll just say I can really empathize with just so many aspects of being an athlete that there's a lot of it that it is actually a gift to be able to empathize and understand so much.
I was gonna say with your story, and I'm sure other people in the field that were former athletes, there's so much of that athlete life that pertains to not only life, but where you can be relatable and you experiencing a career-ending injury or struggling with finding the path maybe you wanted to go right away can bring such a different aspect to help these current and former athletes. So I love that. All right. I want to give our audience, if you're okay with transitioning a little bit,
Yeah.
some tools to maybe walk away with or just learn a little bit more about. If an athlete is struggling with something mid competition, is there any reset cues that you like to do or tell them to practice right in that moment?
Yes. I would say, you know what? A lot of us know, because I wouldn't say it's like in that moment per se, but one skill that I learned in DBT that I was like, I wish someone would have taught this to me. And there are different versions of this taught to athletes. It's kind of like visualization and it's an emotion regulation skill that does come out of sports psychology. So I bet you've heard of it. In dialectical behavioral therapy, it's called coping ahead. So it's basically taking an upcoming situation that like you're gonna be in, and being able to like play that out in your mind, like imagine it. But here's the difference, like as an athlete, or at least in my mind as an athlete, like to me it was like just visualizing the dive. Okay. Like I'm gonna
Mm-hmm.
watch myself do this dive, I'm gonna watch myself do it well, and then I'll get on the board and do it. What the skill cope ahead specifies is instead of watching yourself do the thing or like be in the competition, you see it as though you are in the competition rather than watching yourself. So it's like important to be doing it in your mind, like being in that competition, and then also imagining how you're emotionally feeling, not
Yep.
just physically what you're doing, and being able to notice how intensely you're feeling on like that 0 to 10 scale. And then as you repeat that in your mind, like the week before, a few days before, you want to see that intensity level drop. And it's a real emphasis on how you're emotionally feeling rather than what you're physically doing, because our emotional intensity, as it goes down, it communicates to our body that we trust our body to do what we're asking of it, which if you're performing at that level, like we all know we've practiced so much, like we should
Yeah.
easily be able to trust our bodies to do what it's practiced years to do. But all of us get in our heads and it can be really hard. Even the greats talk about how they get in their heads, and using a skill like cope ahead and being able to imagine yourself performing and including that emotional component of how honestly anxious, nervous, pressured, whatever the feeling is, honestly feeling that and then repeating that visualization, knowing that with repetition, that intensity should go down. If it doesn't, that's also something like, yeah, bring that up with a sports psychologist, a therapist who focuses on athlete mental health. Like, those are helpful resources to tap into if you're
Yeah.
noticing something like that isn't helping.
I like how you talk about seeing it a little deeper in the emotional side of things because I think that we sometimes, if you practice visualization or imagery before, um, it's sometimes without having that outside person or even thinking deeper into it, know that you got to look into the emotional side. It's not just seeing myself perform that task, but Are you a person that clenches their jaw? Do you have are your fists starting to form when you're getting tense and realizing what happens within your body as you're getting nervous or things like that, that it's so important to learn that they're there. And then steps on how do we regulate those a little bit.
Yeah. You know, and you bring up like the most important part of Code Ahead, which I never forget to teach about this in group. So I'm so happy you said that is relaxing after you visualize. Like you have to, I don't care if you stretch, I don't care if you take 10 deep breaths, I don't care if you drink a cup of tea, just something that communicates to your body that you're relaxing, because then that reinforces a sense of competency to your body. And again, like reinforces like, okay, I can trust myself. And that emotional component is just so important because it's like our body, we know that our bodies know what to do. We know what motions we need to take to execute what it is we need to know. It's more of the what's going on in our brain and how are we feeling and how do we get that to get on board with what our muscle memory already knows to be true.
Very true. Very true. Okay. If when you're helping athletes, is there a toolkit for life after sports when we're looking at performance? Isn't the main focus anymore. I feel I certainly struggled with that, and I know current and transitioning athletes, we have a lot of purpose, we have a lot of drive, but now it's like it's not related to stats anymore. Where do I put all this?
Yeah. Oh gosh, this is something that, like, again, there's a DBT scale that I was like, if someone would have showed me this, like this could have been like the closing ceremony to like college. This would have like solved so many of my problems. But also at the
Yeah,
same time, who knows if I would have been open to it at the time. So it's easier. And in hindsight, it's 2020, you know. But
yeah,
so, first, what you said about goals, because I think that brings up a good point, is like, you're right. What are we supposed to do when we don't have a clear goal at the end of every season of life? And it becomes more about I have until the end of my life now, and hopefully that's a very long one.
yeah,
And what that becomes more about is our values rather than goals. It doesn't mean goals aren't important anymore. It just means those goals need to be correlated to what's important to us. And those are our values. Our values guide our actions and how we see ourselves. So it's important to know what those are. The good news is, even if we don't know what our values are, we likely can find them and they could be extremely similar to what they were when you're in a sport. Like they could
yeah.
be, in fact, exactly the same, especially if you're recently retired. It's like you could have the same values. It's just the goals that need to get reworked. But if you don't know what your values are, that's where we feel a loss of identity and like we don't know who we are anymore. So. Yeah, it can be very tough, and the skill in DBT, which, like, I wish they just called it, like, values work or something, but it's called
Mhm.
accumulating positive emotions in the long term, which
Oh.
it's just, like, a mouthful, but,
Right.
it's really just about, like, how to help feel like you have a grounded sense of self based on and it's super helpful for people pleasing, which a lot of overachievers are people pleasers. If
Mhm.
you can, because if you're a people pleaser, you spend a lot of time, and, like, I would say I struggle with people pleasing, not as much as I did, like, 5, 10 years ago, but when you're trying to please everybody else, you're basically trying to guess what's important to all the people around you, forgetting what's important to yourself, where when you
Yeah.
have a grounded sense of self and you know at the snap of a finger what your top prioritized value is, as long as your actions are in alignment with that value, assuming your value isn't something like to be as selfish as possible, you know? Like, I'm
Yeah,
assuming
yeah, yeah.
most people that's not their top value, but like if your main value is kindness, if what you just did or said would fall under the kindness umbrella, who cares how somebody else took it? Like, or who cares that someone else
Yeah.
is thinking, like, you know that you are walking the path of kindness and what's most important to you. So
Yep.
you can let yourself off the hook knowing that you are living into the life that you want to lead. So,
I there were so many bits and pieces of, what you just said that I was like, "Let's talk deeper into that," because you've talked about on social media, which I love, the values and finding yours, and, you've even said sometimes you have them, you just need to write them down,
mhm.
because I feel like as former or current athletes you normally have a little something. Maybe you just need a reminder of what they are. So, looking up things or writing down what you think your values might be and saying, are your actions aligning with that? Because it can feel like this big thing of like, oh, wait, what are my values? What are values? Like, and it just becomes overwhelming. But if
Yeah.
you go back to it and
Mhm.
say, well, maybe even at least what did I value in sport? Maybe you
Mhm.
start to see that there are some similarities.
Yeah, gives you more of a lane because it is
Yeah,
super overwhelming. I like what was it? The other day I Googled like list of values just because I was like, I wonder what will pop up. Oh my gosh,
yeah,
it was so many words. I was like, this is so overwhelming. So yeah, you're so
yeah,
right. It definitely makes it feel more manageable when you think about, well, what did I value from my sport or even any transition in life? Like people
yeah,
who are going into retirement, like what were the things you valued from work that like you can bring into the next chapter. Like it's obviously going to look different, but what's like the overall umbrella of what's important? And it's also important because then people will want to like circle like 20 different values and it's like,
yeah,
no, we really and there was actually I was listening to I really love organizational psychology too. I love like
yeah,
leadership and stuff like that. So I was looking at some research and it used to be like, okay, if you have three main values, like that's 3 to 5, 5 is pushing it, 3 is, like, where you wanna keep it, and now they're saying it's even, like, 1 or 2 values to not overload yourself and to make it
yeah,
easy to make your values operational, like, you wanna be able to operationalize your values, and that just means how do you live into your values on a daily basis? What does that look like behaviorally? So and I mean, it could be hard with even 3, like, I could really see, like, just having one guidepost, one North Star would be really helpful because it doesn't mean other things aren't important to you. It just means it falls under that one main umbrella. So it's like just make it as like bite-sized as possible.
no, that's good. I'm gonna work on that this week of slimming mine down because, yeah, it's if I'm thinking off the top of my head, I'm sure I could probably list off 10, probably 5 if you made me, but putting it down to 1, I have homework now, Erica.
Yeah,
Thank
I
you.
can send you a
You did it.
values list that's really pretty too if you want me to.
I would love that.
I will
Thank
send
you.
mhm.
See, even I need help every episode. I
I
wanted
honestly, I'm constantly I have a Word doc on my computer that just says values and, like, anything that catches my eye, because also our values tend to be unchanging for a long period of time, but
yeah,
I literally keep a Word doc of, like, different words that catch my eye so that if I ever do wanna, like, add to the definition of my values or, like, shift them, it's like,
yeah,
and that's part of the fun of life too, because also as athletes, we like to, like, it's like we go to a competition, we wanna win that. It's like, "Okay, cool, we did it." With
yeah,
values, you never get an, "Okay, yay, I did it." Like,
yeah.
no. Like, it's just like, cool, you have a grounded sense of what your values are right now.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
and that can be daunting to a lot of us who are used to being in a space of we have very well-defined goals, but being able to
Mhm.
see that as the fun of life of like, wow, how cool that I'm gonna get to watch myself shift and grow and find different things important. Because there are major shifts we go through in life where our values do need to shift, and that's okay.
Yeah,
Whether it's going into a career, getting married, it could be moving to a different state. Like there could be just big shifts in our life that will create a transition and a change in our values. And so seeing that as a fun opportunity to see how it will add to our lives and what we know about ourselves is a lot more fun than to be like, so I'm never going to be done with this. Well, in like a fun way.
not really. No, I like that. And I think sometimes too, that's part of, I don't know if that's something you struggled with or it's gotten better. Mine has gotten better for sure of having things that there's not a finite end to because that was such a huge part of my life for so long. And that was so fun for me as a goal oriented person. Okay, this, you tell me to reach it, I'm going to reach it. All right, now find a new one. So it's been nerve-wracking, fun, all the fun emotions of finding things in life that don't have that
Hmm.
exact ending where it's like it's constantly building. It's a little bit terrifying, but it's
Uh-huh.
okay, it's life.
So true though. Like I know, cause yeah, you're right. I've gotten better at it too, cause it's kind of like In therapy, it's just like, okay, so now you see clients day in, day out. It's super fun and you like hit goals when like clients reach their what we call like life worth living goals, which is just like people come to therapy wanting to work on very specific things. Once you reach those, it's like an indicator that should they want to end therapy, that you're all set. Like you came here to get what you wanted. But then it's like, okay,
Yeah,
that person ends, but like you're like I'm still here in this room with other people like that, like this work doesn't end, and I love that. For me it's great, but like I do also like creating goals for myself, and that's what I think is such a strength for athletes is we don't really become complacent, really. Like,
yeah,
we always are like, okay, so what could I do differently? And is there anything, any skill sets I could add? And that's like where I'm at right now. Like, I love what I do with DBT, and I'm also an RO DBT therapist, which is just like basically DBT. Standard DBT is for under regulation of emotions, like under control of emotions. So we need more emotion
mhm,
regulation. Radically open DBT is more for perfectionism or over control of emotion. Kind of what you were saying, that like you'd hold in your emotions and then they'd come out randomly.
yeah, yeah.
RO DBT has an interesting word for that. They call it emotional leakage. Just like, interesting.
Okay.
What clinical term? Um, but yeah, that's what you made me think of when you said it. I was like, oh, we're leaking. But
Maybe that'll help me feel better as they happen.
yeah, exactly. Just say that to yourself, you'll laugh, and you'll be like, "What a weird therapeutic clinical term." Um, but yeah, so I do both of those, and I was just like, "You know what? Like, even though I went to a trauma-focused program for grad school, like, I had EMDR is now a thing, and I really want to, like, be able to provide a very specific trauma therapy." So it's like, that's my next goal for myself. It's like, "Okay, by the new year, I'll be an EMDR therapist," which EMDR is also helpful for performance because you can focus on
Mm,
different themes of like whether it's fear or loss of control or whatever the issue is within performance. You can use EMDR to desensitize yourself to that feeling. It doesn't mean the feeling isn't there. It just means it doesn't stop you dead in your tracks. And so I was like, oh, I could have used that as an athlete. And
yep.
also there's different events because you also don't have to have like one traumatic event. You can, and EMDR is like very, very effective for that. But there's different themes that pop up in our lives connected to negative beliefs or negative core beliefs that we hold about ourselves, others, or the world, that we can start to like get in front of and make sure that they're
Yep.
not in front of us stopping us. It's just something that's there that we're able to just like step over so that we don't like trip on it, which is really, really amazing.
I need to write that down. I love that. Step over it so you don't trip on it. That is good. All right. We're gonna transition to a rapid fire segment. We call it fast break. So it is just a couple questions you have to answer first thing. One book every athlete should read.
Dare to Lead. It's by Brene Brown.
Good one. One mental habit to start this week.
Oh, sleeping, having a regular bedtime and wake time.
Mm. One phrase you wish athletes would stop saying to themselves.
It's something around mental toughness. Like, um, like just getting through things, like just like or getting over things. Like just get
Mm.
over it. Like, no.
Good, good, good. All right. One way they can support a teammate who is struggling off the field.
Oh my gosh. I noticed blank. Are you okay? Or what's up?
Good. What's one myth you would like every athlete or ex-athlete to let go of?
I mean, mental toughness is about getting over everything and powering through everything.
Yeah,
hmm
that was good.
I want to
All
change my
right.
book. Can I add a book? I have a different one too.
Let me check what
Yeah.
the rules we can allow
The
it.
council says it's okay. Grit by Angela Duckworth.
I've read that one.
I
That one is a
love
good
it.
one. I probably need to reread that. That's been several years now, but that one is a good one.
So good.
You often talk about aligning your values with action? And we've kind of talked about that previously. What does that look like in your daily life now?
Beautiful. So one of my I'm deciding if it's number 1 or number 2 right now, but one of my values is community. So the
Hmm.
way that that looks in action for me, because along with being a therapist that focuses on athlete mental health, I'm also very passionate about women's rights. So like women's sports, for example, is having a very like we're in very important moments right now with like women's professional sports.
Yeah.
And we're also just going through a lot within women's rights and the fight to maintain or regain some of those rights. So, in action, I'm also the mental health director of a nonprofit in Long Beach, California called the Feminist Uprising. And so along with being, I will do different trainings for them or like different, I'll help them with what they need within their leadership team. I
Yeah.
also help them. We do these things called feminist cafes where it's completely free to the community. Anyone who wants to come can come hang out. There's like snacks, and then we just had one a couple of weeks ago that we had a panel of speakers, and this one was specifically about living with disabilities in today's society. And we just kind of pick a different cafe to do every time. And a feminist cafe actually comes back from when we were like fighting for reproductive rights the first time around. And
Hmm.
back when women would gather and all their husbands thought that they were like getting together to like knit and sew and stuff, but in reality, they were having political conversations and like talking
Yeah.
about how they could advocate and create movements and stuff. So that's why they're called feminist cafes. It's just a little callback to what used to happen back in the day. So and then also like attending different like protests and stuff. I'm just a very active therapist that it's like I'm
Yeah.
also very out in the community, and I'm someone who if I hear something that sounds off, like I'm gonna say something. I don't really care if people tell me that I embarrass myself, but or anything
Yeah.
like that. It's just kind of like if I hear something that's sideways, I'm gonna ask, what did you mean by that? Can you say
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
again for me? And usually that will get someone to reflect very quickly. Or like, oh.
Oh. I love that. I think that helps too with kind of what we were talking about a little bit earlier. Make that list, and then how can you or how do you notice ways that you do that already in your life? So,
Mhm.
community is a good one. All right, as we close, I ask all my guests a very similar question. If you could go back and say one thing to your athlete self or something you wish someone had told you, what would that be?
Here's how to figure out how to accumulate positive emotions in the long term. No, I'm just kidding. That one skill. Um, no, I would say, like you have fun with where you're going. It's gonna be fun.
It's gonna be fun. I feel like that would have been good for me. No, it's not my moment, but that was instead of being terrified, like
Yeah.
it's gonna be fun.
Mhm.
That's a good one, Erica. Thank you so much for taking time to be on here today. You've been amazing. We were talking about a lot of deep stuff, but I'm like leaving the episode smiling and like feeling refreshed. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you for taking the conversation there. I really loved your
Yeah.
questions. Thanks.
Of course.
Yeah.
We will get Erica back on, so don't worry, this isn't her last time. If you've enjoyed episodes like this or know a former, current, or professional that could use this, please share, like, and subscribe, and we will see you guys again.